Welcome to the Real Life OverTime Podcast, the place where the members of the Real Life Ministries sermon team go deeper into the weekend sermon. Watch them as they unpack, unfold, and unravel the weekend sermon like never before. So fasten your seatbelts, hit play, and join us for Real Life OverTime, where every episode is an adventure and this sermon doesn't end on Sunday.
Hello, Real Life Ministries. Welcome to the OverTime Podcast. And this weekend, we are going further into our study on the book of Nehemiah. And I got to actually not preach this weekend, and it was amazing, and I'm sure you thought it was amazing too. And I get to sit here today with the guys who spoke. Other than Christian, you're sitting in for Greg. Greg was out, was preaching this last weekend, and he's out now. Pat, you were up at the North, and so thanks for doing that. And Gabe, you were again at Hayden. And Chris, thank you so much for preaching here at Post Falls this weekend. So far, we've been through Nehemiah, who he is. Larry Osborne started us off there. He was just a regular guy, not a priest or a prophet, but God called him and used him. And we went through, okay, once he got there, Nehemiah gets to Jerusalem to repair the wall. He calls people to the vision of let's do this together. And then last week we went through, okay, now there's opposition, and which really fit because of the Charlie Kirk situation. When you try to rebuild something, the enemy comes. This weekend we went further down the road of, okay, how did they work together to defeat the opposition? And so, Pat, why don't you start with just sort of the highlights? I want to just say one thing before he starts. On our app, we have all of the different messages from all the different campuses every single week. And I want to remind you that we have some amazing godly guys that have put a lot of prep in. Yes, we do a lot of the work together, but then they each, the Lord really hits them. Last week, man, some of those guys, I wish I'd have been at their sermons. But you get to see them preach in the whole story, so they don't have to actually re-preach it to you now, but they're going to give us the highlights of where they were at, because we know many of you are in home groups, life groups, across the 4 campuses. So you heard things a little bit differently based on who was preaching. But Pat, why don't you start this week and share sort of the highlights?
Yeah. As far as Nehemiah's response, the people's response to opposition, and that being a theme, that it's such a thick theme throughout the Bible. That's always the case. And in that whole rebuilding situation, there wasn't just like one group of people that went back, but God actually sent the people back in 3 different waves over a course of time. And so before getting like back to the Nehemiah piece, we looked at like Haggai and Zechariah, those minor prophets, and they were rebuilding the altar, and then they were rebuilding the temple. And as they started doing that, they faced opposition. The people came against them, discouraged them, caused fear, caused frustration, and the work stopped. The work stopped them. And then God used Haggai, Zechariah to encourage the people, let's keep going. And they picked up the work and they finished the work. And then Ezra came in, the second wave, and he was to teach the people the word of the Lord, right? Rally around the community that God had called them to, people of faith and in relationship with the Lord and walking in God's ways. And the opposition came within about their own internal sin that was hidden, and the sin they kept repeating, falling over and over again. So it took a minute before getting to the Nehemiah piece to go, there's work that God maybe wanted to do, but you shrunk back out of fear or discouragement. And he still wants to pick up where he left off. Like he's still at work and wanting to do that. And then even with like Ezra, the internal sin that they repeatedly fell in and they kept in the dark, the solution is bringing it to the light of community and in repentance. And that's what Nehemiah did in rebuilding the people back to be the people of God. And then on display with Nehemiah, right? Over and over again. I actually stole a couple of your points, like praying through it all, right? 7 times, he prays and rallies the people in the community and to be community and fights to stay focused. And just that theme is so thick. today, right? Still today, joining God's work, expecting opposition, which is the opposite of the way I think it should be. Like I would think God would just pave the way to be a little smoother. Oh, you need help here in this area of life. Like, oh yeah, let me, pave the way. So it was good. Yeah, a lot of good responses, and God was definitely, speaking loud and clear.
What did Greg have to say, Christian, this last week?
Yeah, it was really cool watching Greg get up there and kill it. He did an amazing job. And same, we just journeyed through what do you do with opposition, and the whole piece of rallying and blowing the trumpet, and just processing that myself. One of the things for me is sometimes it's not easy to ask for help, and how so often I can get in my mind that, well, God saved me and now I should have it together. And when I have to ask for help, it's failure. And the whole process of what do you do when opposition comes? It's all throughout the Bible. It's okay to ask for help. As a small group leader, it's okay to ask for help. As a leader, it's okay to ask for help, and that we are called to rally together. And he just talked about the heart of prayer that Nehemiah had. Sounds like similar, that he sought the Lord in prayer. And he did such a good job walking through kind of the whole process of God having a God-centered heart and repentance, and how that then leads to this vision, right, that we talked about last week, and how God has given all of us a vision, and starting at your part of the wall, and how Nehemiah had God and his forgiveness, and how it fueled him to do his mission. And he went into Hebrews, which I thought was good, and he talked about how Jesus overcame his opposition. The joy that was to come is how he endured the cross. And he just talked about, he got pretty emotional, which made a lot of people emotional. It was pretty cool. Just that the people's faces in heaven was on the other side of the cross. And sometimes when we face opposition, we can get so lost in it. But one of the ways for us to get through it is to keep our eyes on what God has promised. And that can be the promise that gets us through, and how we aren't doing it alone, and we can be together. And that doesn't mean we stop building, and that doesn't mean we are not ready to defend against the enemy. And just the imagery of what the enemy did in that time. First, he tried to discourage, then he tried to draw him out, right? Then he tried to start opposition from within. And he just talked about how opposition within sometimes can even be within us. Like we look internally, and the enemy attacks us in our minds, and we don't have to do that alone. He said that and a whole bunch of other really powerful stuff. He did a really good job. Yeah.
Gabe, what the Lord put on your heart this week?
Very similar stuff. It's almost like we planned these sermons out together or something. I don't know. It's weird. We talked about opposition last week and the reality of it, to expect it. This week, we just talked about how to fight against it. And to me, as we read through the text, and especially in chapter 4 and chapter 6, it was three really key ways of how they fought against the opposition. In chapter 4, verse 1 through 3, it talks about the opposition of Sanballat specifically, and how he was threatening and intimidating and sowing seeds of doubt in their minds. And then in verse 4, it just says simply, and then I prayed. Like Nehemiah went to prayer immediately. They go back to building the wall. There's progress, but then there's continued opposition. And so it's like, hey, we're actually getting somewhere. And then the opposition got even more intense and more threatening. And then in verse 9, he says, and then we prayed. And it's like they hit their knees again and they prayed. And I just stopped and I just said, guys, if there was ever a time for us as a nation to pray, it's right now. Like this whole Charlie Kirk thing is rocking people. I think in a good way. I think in a way where people are going, okay, we need to get on track with the Lord. Like we need to turn, like even in my family, I shared this last week, like there's been people that have turned to the Lord because of this. And I think it's 2 Chronicles 7:14 where God says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, I will heal their land. And I'm like, this is our time. We talk about this all the time. This is our slice of history. And if we're just going to think that we can just rebuild and make America great again because we're Americans, like we're going to miss it. Like we have to humble ourselves and seek the face of God and pray. The second thing they did is they rallied together. He said, we called the nobles, the officials, and all the people together. And some held weapons, and some did the work, and some had the trumpet, and some did this, and some did that. And we all have our section of the wall. We're rallying together, and we're all building the wall, and we're doing it in different places, but we got to do it together. And then I love what you said about, like, he said, man, if you hear the trumpet, rally to that spot. And that to me is a picture of the church. Like, we're all working on the wall, and someone needs to go like, hey, like, sound the trumpet. Like, my marriage is in trouble. Like, my anxiety is through the roof. My depression is killing me. My kids are lost. Like, sound that trumpet. And the goal of the church is to come alongside that person and help them out and encourage them, pray for them. And then the third thing they did, I just love Nehemiah's response in chapter 6. He tries to draw them out, right? And says, hey, just come out and talk. Just come out and talk. Or, you know, this is going to get back to the king. The king's going to hear that you're trying to be the king. And Nehemiah just goes, there's no truth in your story. I'm getting back to work. I mean, it's just simple.
You know, that's not true.
You know, that's not true. Like, shut up. And then it says, and I went back to work with even greater enthusiasm.
That's good.
And that to me is like, when the enemy attacks, it's not fun, but that should be hopeful to us that he's attacking us because we're doing a good thing. Keep at it with even greater enthusiasm. You want to rebuild your marriage? The enemy hates it. He's going to attack it. Go at it with even more enthusiasm. Your kids, your job, your whatever that is, like, keep at the work God has in front of us.
Yeah, that's really good. I heard great things about you preaching this weekend, how the Lord used you. So why don't you share a little bit about what
I just love God's word. You know, Nehemiah, there's so much to glean from just his method model. There's a lot of scripture that it's hard to figure out the application. I mean, there's just directly in this one, it's like, here's how he responded. And it was just so wise. I think one of the things that you guys haven't said, or just an aspect that really hit me, was the way he dealt so differently with outsiders versus insiders. You know, and even kind of just the visualization of, you know, those are inside the wall that he was helping and rebuilding and calling in, and those outside the wall. And his response is like 180 degrees different. You know, when he finds out about the rich Jews taxing the poor Jews, he becomes angry. He ponders it in his mind. He calls together a face-to-face meeting. He calls out their specific action. And to me, there's just a lot of application to that. It's like, if you're struggling with someone inside, if it's your family, if it's in your church, we go face to face. We don't let our anger bring us to sin.
Really
And we really call it out. And when you look someone in the eye and you say it, and you're not gossiping about it, you're not rallying other people around it, you specifically go after it, that was huge. But how he dealt with outsiders was exactly what you just said. It's like he didn't even give them the time of day. And I'm not saying that's 100% that the application for all of us. There are times and places for us to lean in. And the time he leaned in was when they questioned his character and they said things that were untrue. And then so he spoke up. I mean, his response before was like, I'm busy 4 times. But that 5th time was like, you said something that's not true, and I'm going to make sure you know it's not true. So to me, that was really just a very big distinction. And, you know, what do we take away? I think the thing that I wanted to focus most on is Nehemiah had a direction, like he had a God-given purpose, and that was very clear through prayer. For us today, we might all want to go, I want this big thing like Nehemiah, but Jesus has already given us the thing. He's already given us the Great Commission as believers to go make disciples. And so that's our work we already have before us. And there may be specific passion points that we're called to do, but all of us are called to go and make disciples in our family. And so to me, I'm like, if anyone's questioning, what do? We have it. Now we might have some passions that go over and above, but that's what we're doing. We're building a wall of disciples. So
That's good. Yeah, I think I grew up in a church where everybody was fine all the time. There was always the fake smile. And so I actually felt like there must be something wrong with me. Because when I gave my life to the Lord, I mean, I had to walk away from friends. I had to walk away because, you know, they were going to keep partying. I'm dying, you know, and, oh, sorry, you know, and I don't have a lot of friends. I battling with addiction, a lot of guilt, a lot of stuff. And I go to church and everybody's fine. So I guess I don't fit here. And later on, you know, I actually started having some involvement with AA, and there you're like, I'm an addict. I'm hopeless and helpless without Christ, right? Or without my higher power back then. That's how they phrased it. But as a Christian, I knew. And if I remember breaking and losing my sobriety, and it's like, well, yeah, I blew it. And everybody was like really glad to see it. We're glad you're here, right? We got you. And he didn't have to put on a face there. There was no pressure to do that. And so even to this day, I just see people that keep people at a distance so that they can appear to be good, like they've got the answers. Because if you don't have the answers, you must be nothing or zero. All the reasons the enemy will isolate you. And I remember when I read Nehemiah, the work is extensive, right? We're all, there's a lot going on. I'm working in front of my house, and in this area over here, you're working over here. And when the enemy comes, if he targets your place, your part of the wall, blow the trumpet. It's called for the trumpet, blow the trumpet, everybody rallies to there. And a lot of times there are people that think they're great, or at least they know they're not great, let's say, but they don't tell anybody, and then they're mad. Well, the church wasn't there for me. Well, you didn't blow the trumpet. Well, I called you on the phone, and you didn't answer. Well, I didn't know you were in trouble. The work is extensive. You have to say, I'm under attack. You have to be clear on that. And then we have to go, if they're under attack, then we are going to rally, right? And I have to build into my life people that I'm, right next to my house, right next to, and I'm walking with people that are near me enough that ask, that notice. If you don't build your life around this common work, and you're under attack, and then you shout to somebody that you don't even know, or you don't shout at all, you're fighting an enemy in a way that God didn't tell you to fight it. You're trying to do it alone, right? Ecclesiastes 4, 2 are better than 1. 3 are better than 2. Why? So what does it look like to live a life where I'm listening for the trumpet of God's people who might be in distress, rather than I'm waiting on the trumpet of my boss to tell me how many hours what do I need to do to achieve this or accomplish that? That trumpet is the one I answer to.
Jim, don't you think, though, it's a lot easier for people to respond to the trumpet call than to blow it themselves, though?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like I've talked to a lot of people that have said, I'll go and help, but I have a hard time receiving it.
Yeah.
Right? And you wrote about that in your book, Revolutionary Disciple, like the one who's willing to not just be willing to help, but to ask for help as well.
It's the most humbling thing.
Humility piece.
I still get to be the hero. I can still be proud when I come and help you.
Right.
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 If I'm doing it for the wrong motives. But yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Calling for the trumpet and understanding that the enemy does come, and you can't win alone. It's going to take everybody to fight the fight together.
By design.
By design.
Right? By design. God made it that way. Yeah. I had shared at the beginning of my message a story about trying to quit smoking cigarettes. Lord had done a lot of good work in my life, and I had experienced him, and I knew him, and all these things. It radically changed my life. And then joining God's work was, I knew he was wanting me to give that up. It was time for that now. And so I'd try, and I'd pray, and I'd fail, and I'd quit, and I'd pick them back up again. I remember multiple times, like driving her down, in my truck, throwing them out the window, to later turn back around to find them. Sometimes I'd find them, sometimes not. I was just remember feeling so much condemnation, because I'm feeling weak and vulnerable and tempted, and you can't get it right. No matter what you do, it's not good enough, just heaping. Then just to give in to the pressure, And it wasn't until I was actually with Doug Smoot way back, a class that was offered here. And I took the class and I quit, and then I failed. And I came back and he said, keep going, keep trying. You're doing good. You're learning. You're not done yet. Keep going. I took the class again and I quit, and then I failed. And he said, same thing, keep going. I took the class again, and I'm on my 18th time quitting smoking cigarettes today. It's been like 23 years or whatever, but it was so much effort, but it was joining God's work. But it wasn't until I let others in and to be fully known and allowed them to help me. And it's God's design, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ, right? Galatians 6:2. So whether it's finances and like, God, I know you're wanting me to be a more faithful steward with what you've entrusted to me, and whatever that looks like, joining God's work in that. Or if it's marriage stuff, God, we want to tune in, or how you raise these kids, right? To be faithful with what you've entrusted to us. I want to join your work, right? I want to participate with what it is you're doing in my life. By design, it is in community. And Nehemiah was so good about that, rallying people together in that. Like, no, we're doing it. Even with the leaders, I love that point. He handled them different. Like, no, that you guys are not being the faith community, brothers and sisters.
I kind of like the idea of when, Nehemiah grabbed people's beards and pulled out their hair. And he was so frustrated. He sat down and he's kicking up dust, and I cannot believe these people, but
that's why I shave. I don't want you to do that to me.
So, what are you, danger. What are you suggesting? Get that. I got to cut that.
I do think it's super interesting, the imagery of what the enemy in that story does versus our enemy. Like, he came in and tried to discourage and condemn. If that didn't work, he tried to turn him against. Then he tried to draw him out and isolate.
That's right.
That is exactly how our enemy works.
And then he lied about him.
He lied. Yeah. And so he tries to isolate us. And what's so interesting, I heard this a while ago, in prison, the worst form of punishment is solitary confinement. Yeah. It's the worst thing. And yet, Satan gets us to run to that outside of prison.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, in prison, it's the worst thing. No one wants it. Outside of prison, Satan tries to isolate us, and it's almost like we run to it because we feel like it's safer, but it's actually when he gets us in the worst place.
So true.
That's really good.
And one of my favorite verses in the book, but especially in this section, is, and you're talking about it, chapter 4, verse 6. So he prays, opposition comes, he prays, and then it simply says, so we built the wall.
Half the type.
That is that Romans passage, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. When you're tempted, so I chose productivity, right? I chose to be faithful. I chose to be, choose what is true, right, and good. As I face discouragement, okay, how do I resist that, not be consumed by that, and choose what is good, something productive, something that helps, something that's, of the light.
Pat, I think about what
so
you
we
were
built
saying.
the wall.
Yeah, with your example of smoking cigarettes, and Jim, you really teed it up week 2, talking about grit. And I just think whatever we put our minds to, whatever we say, okay, God's calling me to build this wall, the wall of my marriage, the wall of my faith, the wall of my family, the wall of my ministry, whatever that is. If God's given us that wall to build, and we expect the opposition to come, we have to be prepared to be able to fight through opposition. And I like the passage in Galatians 6:9, it says, do not grow weary in doing what is good. At just the right time, you'll reap a harvest of blessing if you do not give up. And so Paul's saying, like, you got to have grit. You got to have determination. You got to have perseverance. You got to have stick-with-itness. You got to, don't give up. Don't give up on trying to give up smoking. Don't give up on your marriage. Don't give up on your kids. I mean, I'm the product of people not giving up. Man. I, for years, turned my back away. And if my mom, my dad, my grandparents would have ever thought that I would be a pastor of a church, we're just hoping he gives his life to Jesus, right? But they did not give up. And so that's something I've been.
That's so cool.
There's some people in my life I'm like,
that's right.
I wasn't giving up on. I can't do that.
I think in that too is one thing I was thinking of through this whole series is opposition doesn't come unless you're actually going somewhere. Yeah. Like your whole story of quitting smoking, you're facing opposition because you're doing something different. You're trying to change your pathway. And what Nehemiah was doing, if he just came in and it's like, hey, I just want to be a part of this community and just chill out, he wouldn't have faced any opposition.
Yeah.
That's right.
Opposition comes when you take headwind. You're like, we're actually going against something, and it feels like that's where we're at right now in this nation. There's really something we're against, and it's not people; it's a real enemy who wants to steal, kill, and destroy, and that's what he wants is destruction and death. And Christ wants life and abundance, and just fascinating how when we're going somewhere, there's going to be challenges. That's just par for the course. That's the grit.
I think this whole Charlie Kirk thing, I think God's going to do something. We were just talking about this in sermon team. I think God's going to do something big in this. Wants to, will, but the enemy wants to do something big in this as well. And if the church is rising up, and if the church is going through a revival, and if people are coming to Christ, the enemy hates that more than anything.
Yeah.
And so he's going to oppose that more than anything. And so we sat in a room 6 months ago planning out this sermon series, thinking we were smart to go through the book of Nehemiah.
So
the Lord's
wow.
like, you have no clue what you're
Yeah.
doing. I'm planning this because your church is going to need this.
For real.
People are going to need this. It's just cool to be able to see it.
Yeah.
We got to have grit.
We're going into this next week. So there was they got the wall built. There's a big celebration. A lot to celebrate there. As you go through the story, though, the enemy does something a little bit sneaky, and the people fell for it. And I'm not going to tell you any more about what that is.
Cliffhanger.
And but life is a journey. One defeat does not mean that you're a loser.
Yeah.
And one win doesn't mean you're victorious. If there was only one fight and you won that one fight.
Can I share a quick story that I shared at the beginning of my message? Was when we were in high school, a couple of my buddies, we started this Christian club called the 180 Club. We thought we were so cool. There was like 5 of us planning this, and we had this big expectation that, week 1 we'd show up and there'd be like 100 kids there. And so we show up the first day, and it's only the 5 of us. Like, it's just us. And like, we grew a little bit over the coming weeks. It was like we got to 12 kids, 15 kids at public high school, Christian club. But Columbine high school shooting, April 1999, we had 30 kids the next week, 40 kids the next week. By the end of the school year, it was standing room only in that classroom, because people were like, how could you want to gather as Christians when this shooting had just taken place, targeted at Christians? And to me, that was exactly what you're talking about. It's like, you look at a failure or fear and go, those really off base, students who shot these kids, they meant, evil. They had been influenced, that they had intended evil. And obviously it was the enemy that prompted them, but God used it across the nation in high schools to see those clubs started. And it was just like, I'm seeing that right now. I'm just the beginning stages of that for what took place.
Isn't that cool though, that God put that on your heart to do that, knowing what was going to happen? So he was preparing you, and you didn't even know it, when there's no kids showing up, knowing that this is going to happen.
Totally.
Well, and again, I'll just say it this way: 2001, 9/11, huge explosion of people in churches around the country.
That's right.
Very similar to what just happened. How do we latch onto that and continue to walk with Jesus, not just for a period of time, but until the end of time? And that's my prayer right now, is that God is building something in our people. I know he's reaching out. He's knocking on the doors of hearts, and he's doing it in the way he does it, supernaturally, in ways we never would have seen. The death of a guy shouldn't cause this kind of a revolution, so to speak. But how long it lasts, what we do in it, determines where it goes. And each of us deciding that this is going to cause us to do a work together and individually, in front of our house and as a part of the wall, determines what happens next. And so we'll be talking about that this next weekend. And I sure appreciate you guys. Love doing this with you. Great crew of people behind the scenes that come in faithfully every week and help us do this. And And so pray it's a blessing. Pray in your life groups. You're thinking about this. You're taking hold of it. It's profoundly impacting you at the heart level. I love what Erica Kirk said. She forgave. Now, there's the one-time forgiveness. Then as the enemy brings it up, there's going to be the forgive. How do I be a forgiving person rather than just saying forgiving words? That's going to take a community. That's going to take the Lord walking with her. And I think that should inspire all of us. How do we become people who are committed to the word, committed to the work, and as a church, as a community, God's got work for us to do. He's doing it. We get to be a part of it. There's challenges, but there's also victories. And I pray that there's victories in your life groups this week. God bless you. See you next week on the OverTime podcast.